Moving on to Poland, a country obviously that you know very well. The situation seems a bit bizarre if I read through the chapter in the report. Can you just summarize what the main issues are in Poland?
I think there are two. The overall international reading of the situation is that the Polish far right only came online, so to speak, in 2015. So there's a new government, which is a conservative government. There is a refugee crisis. The country veers towards the right on these issues. And this is the kind of outbreak of almost, what you could call Polish fascism. Wrong. The scene has been metastasizing for like 20 years, and it has been growing for at least a decade. And it's only now more visible. Let's put it this way. So, these things, the far right develops, let's say, outside the political climate, which some might say, just like in Hungary, might be to some extent more okay for the far right individuals. But then on a completely parallel track, you have the paramilitaries. The paramilitaries, again, after 1989, it's legal. There are paramilitary organizations in the country. I wouldn't say it's very popular, but they do exist. Yet they get a boost in the arm around 2014. And guess why? It's the war in Ukraine. Suddenly, half of the Polish society, I'm exaggerating here, of course, but it's an extremely popular thing to look for opportunities to train yourself, to prepare yourself, to test yourself in case something like Donbass happens in Poland. Now, we can say in 2021 that this is exaggerated. It would have never happened. But believe me, living in Poland in the summer of 2014, it didn't look like that. So certainly you've got a boost of these type of activities. And these activities are essentially done by anyone. They're not far-right. Of course, there are people with far-right views amongst the ones who want to be tested and then, prepared. But there's plenty of most regular middle-class people you could think of. Now, in the sea of this, you have individuals who might have different thoughts, but the milieu, the far-right milieu, exists on a parallel track, and these two do not really meet, especially that the state quite soon realizes that this is a kind of wave that we can also use for our defense purposes ourselves, and the government quite quickly creates a structure that takes over the paramilitary organizations and overlooks them. And now, the government does have a bad press sometimes in the West in terms of allegedly that it's, doing extreme things and stuff like that. But I can tell you one thing, and I think the report makes it clear as well, that the local extremists and the conservative local government do not really get along, to be honest. And let's not focus on the marches and the flags, but on the facts. And the facts are that the paramilitaries and the extremists are developing on parallel tracks, and the government is really keeping a close eye on those extremists, with going as far as actually banning their entry into the country on quite a few occasions for those allegedly nationalist celebrations, simply not allowing Americans, Germans, Swedes, Brits into the country so that they can meet up with their Polish friends, not for paramilitary purposes, but for political purposes. So, there is a bit of a difference. Looks can be deceiving, really.
Thank you. But also in the chapter, you do take a little bit of time to look at those international connections. And it's certainly not for lack of trying. There seems to be some connections definitely to Germany, some connections to Great Britain, some connections to Sweden. What do these connections mean?
I think, Hans, the connections are more political. There is basically a track record of nationalist Polish or extreme right, or whatever you want to call them, or they would object to the extreme right label and even far right label. Organizations wanting to be international, and that goes back to the 1990s. In certain cases, even the 1980s, which is completely underground. So there is a long track record of almost legitimizing oneself because the Swedes, the Germans, the Brits, the Americans get along with us. So there's a long track record of that. And we host them over for a camp in the woods and stuff like that, and we do a bit of barbecue, and then we listen to music, we drink certain liquids, and there is a bit of a paramilitary shooting at the shooting range. But is this really tactical training? Absolutely not. How many of these Brits, Americans, Germans, Swedes come over? Not that many. To what extent the local organization is actually keen on drilling itself into a paramilitary formation? Not really, because they want to be political parties. They want to be, activist organizations. And, you either do social activities or you do tactical paramilitary training. You cannot do both. And again, this is a funny one because they are often dressed in paramilitary or quasi-paramilitary garb, and they look paramilitary to the people in the street, and rightly so. And they, they strike the poses of paramilitaries. But in terms of the actual training in the ranks, very low. And again, it's the individuals from these organizations that told me. So, they said, look, we try to connect with the Ukrainians, and I know we're going to be talking Ukraine as well. And you'll go, yeah, these are paramilitary individuals. We're just, nothing in comparison to them. And that's true.